Deaths on the roads continue. Deaths on the road continue to mount. Good day. This is episode 147 of the Frankly Speaking Jamaica Podcast. I'm Franklin McKnight. Most people who consider using the roads in Jamaica have negative sentiments. They include a fear for life, distress over the untrammeled indiscipline and intimidatory driving, helplessness over the free-for-all, and worry over the state of the surfaces, and more. Jamaicans are treated to constant reports about road traffic statistics, deaths, fatal crashes, how bikers are killing themselves, and so on. The National Road Safety Council has a critical role to play, but is it, or the police force, or any other agency really making a difference to road surface, to road safety, to road safety? Dr. Lucien Jones is the face of the Road Safety Council, and we are pleased to welcome him this afternoon to the Frankly Speaking Jamaica Podcast. But before we hear from Dr. Jones, let me thank you for joining us on this podcast live and remind you all that the same link will bring you to the recorded version later on YouTube if you missed this live podcast. Please feel free to send your comments and questions in the space provided here. You may also reach us by WhatsApp during and after this program at 876-503-9995. That's 876-503-9995. Please remember to share the podcast, and if you have not yet done so, please subscribe. It's easy. Desmond Richards and Winnie Anderson-Brown are with us. And we don't have Mary with us today, and we just lost Winnie to a power cut, but we'll get her back. Desmond, just give us a synopsis of what your concern is today.
Well, the thousands of Jamaicans who, as we speak right now, are facing difficulty. I'm talking about the victims, hurricane victims all over the country who lost their roof. Yes, right. And to date, hundreds of them are without roofs as we speak. And it is raining heavily in St. Elizabeth and all over the country. They are having serious difficulties. I wanted to just talk, I will talk about that.
Okay, thank you. All right, as we say, we will be joined by Winnie again shortly. She was with us. Now, at the start of the show, Dr. Jones came on, Lucien Jones. He's been with the Road Safety Council nearly 30 years now, but he'll tell us a little bit about it. But at the start of this show, we had a hot conversation about faith. Dr. Jones is a man of faith, strong faith. He writes a blog about faith. He's a doctor he has a practice in Maypen. He has had a practice in Maypen for 40 odd years. I went to his practice a long time ago. But today, we are calling on him as the man who is behind, who we know as the vice chair of the Road Safety Council. Good afternoon, Dr. Jones. And please tell us, does the council make any difference to road safety in Jamaica, and what does it do?
Good afternoon, Franklin. Good afternoon, Desmond and Winnie. It's certainly a privilege to be in the company of very senior journalists who have made a significant contribution to national development, and it's a joy to welcome one of my own from Clarendon, Winnie. Couple of things as we start off. One is that the National Road Safety Council has a parliamentary mandate. We have had it from 1993. And the mandate is to coordinate all activities to do with reducing road fatalities and injuries. And a second part of that is to organize public education to that end. So we've been around for a long time. And the chairman of the council always is the prime minister. So we have had several chairpersons, including at the beginning, the Right Honorable P.J. Patterson, and coming right down now to Honorable Andrew Honis. We have made a difference. There's no question about it. When we started in 1993, regularly over 400 people were dying annually. Going back, the data goes back into the 1970s, 1980s. In 2012, because of the efforts of the National Road Safety Council, working with all our partners, and we have many partners, including the police, the number of people who died in Jamaica dropped to 260 from 412 in 1993 or 405, I think. So in that context, we have made a difference. The challenge we face now, is that since 2012, the graph has been going in the wrong direction. And the main reason for that, not the only reason, the main reason for that is the explosion in the number of motorcyclists who are dying on our roads. In 2012, when 260 people died, only, and I use the word guardedly and advisedly, only 42 motorcyclists died. 2 years ago, 2022, in excess of 150 motorcyclists died. 150. So we have moved from 40 something per year to over 150 motorcycles. And that tells a sorry tale. So right now, 336 people have died for the year. And we are hoping, and it's quite likely, that for the first time in 3 years, we'll have less than 400 road fatalities. So what does that mean?
So sorry, can you give us that number again up to this point so far this year?
336 for the year.
Okay.
Compared to 391 last year and 443 in 2022. So we are operating now with a 14% decline in the fatality rate for 2024 compared to 2023. And in fact, the number of persons who died in November was 23, which is the second lowest figure for the entire year. And normally we have in excess of 35, 40 people dying in November. So we are optimistic going into the Christmas period, a time when usually between November and December, a lot of people die. And they die because people drink and drive primarily, because people drive carelessly and much too fast. And they die because, again, motorcyclists are not wearing their helmets. They are behaving on the road in a manner that makes all of us wonder what the devil is going on. And they are driving, people are driving, and not only drinking and driving, but they're smoking ganja and driving. We have good data to show this. Pedestrians are smoking ganja too, and some of them are dying because they're not paying attention on the roads. So we have a potpourri, we have a mix of several factors which are contributing to the mayhem and chaos on our roads. And the behavior of the taxi men and the shuttle drivers is legendary. I will get into that as we go through the program. So what has happened?
Sorry, go on if you're finishing your opening statement.
Yeah. So what has happened in recent times, which I think has accounted for some of the decline in the numbers, is the fact that policemen are now writing tickets electronically. The tickets are moving through the system electronically much more efficiently. And we have to thank the Minister of National Security, Honorable Horace Chan, for this improvement. He has been working very hard at this. So when the ticket goes to the tax office, if you don't pay, it goes to the courts. If you don't go there and pay, then a warrant is produced for your arrest, and the police will come for you. So not gone are the days, but significantly reduced are the days when you have people with 500 tickets and 300 tickets. Those numbers are dropping because people are afraid that they'll be written up and that they'll be arrested. And I believe this is contributing, along with several other things, to the decline we see in the numbers so far. One last thing before I finish with my statement. Fighting and deal with road fatalities, there is no magic bullet. There's no silver bullet. We have to do 5 things together and 5 things well. And those 5 things constitute what is known as the safe systems approach to road safety, which is being promoted worldwide by international agencies and by the World Health Organization. And those 5 things are: we have to make sure we have safe speeds, we have to make sure we have safe roads, we have to make sure we have safe vehicles, safe road users, and when there's a crash, we have to make sure there's a system that can take people to the hospital safely and to a hospital where they can be treated efficiently.
Sorry, can you give us those 5 again, Dr. Jones? And if you're just joining us, we're speaking with
Safe
Dr. Lucien
speeds,
Jones, who's the
number
Vice Chairman
1.
of the Road Safety
Safe
Council.
speeds, number
Go again,
1.
Dr. Jones.
Safe speeds, number 1. And the data is very clear. If you reduce your average speed by 5%, you can have a 30% reduction in fatalities. Very clear. Safe roads, again, the data is very clear. We are hoping to have an international agency come and assess our road network, assign a star to it. Star 1 is the worst, star 5 is the best. What WHO is recommend that we should have at least a star 3 road network. And it has been shown that if you improve your road network, then you can significantly drive down fatalities and injuries. Of course, this international agency, IRAP, will tell the government how much it will cost to have safe roads, and then it's up to the government for us to decide how to spend that kind of money. So safe speeds, safe roads, you have to have safe road users. That's why the Road Traffic Act has been promulgated, and that's why we need to be very careful and follow what the act says. You cannot use your cell phone and drive. It's a distraction. You will crash and kill other people and kill yourself. You can't speed. We will catch you. We'll catch up with you eventually. Safe vehicles, that says for itself. There's a whole industry now that is concentrated on producing safe vehicles. And finally, safe and efficient post-crash system. We can save lives if we have an efficient system where you move people carefully from a crash site to a hospital where people can be treated effectively.
Dr. Jones, I want to thank you for introducing the topic to us. I know my colleagues have some questions, but I want to start off at this particular point. Why is it, because in talking to people about this, that we're going to do this program, one of the questions they ask, why is it that we hear so little from you and from the other authorities, from the police, from NWA, etc., about safe roads? Why can't we have more roads lit properly at night? Why can't we have the little cat's eyes on most of our roadways, which we don't have now, very public thoroughfares? And why can't we have some more signage about corners, bad roads, etc.? And we very rarely hear anything from you, Dr. Jones, and the authorities about that.
Well, Franklin, I don't know what station you're listening to, but I have been on television almost every night and on radio almost every day in the last month or so, talking about safe roads. And I've been saying consistently that the police, ACP Gary, has been pressuring the NWA. He and his team went through the entire island, identified where all the spots were that need fixing, potholes, where cat's eyes were deficient, where the road markings were absent, where road signs were absent, presented it to the NWA in the last 2 years, and the NWA has consistently responded that they have no money to fix. They don't have a budget for this. So yes, we have been talking about this for years. I need to come on your show more often so you can hear me when I talk. It is a
Dr. Jones, seriously.
issue.
Yes, and I hear that.
Issue that you have addressed.
Isn't NWA one of the partners of the council? And the Prime Minister is sometimes in the thing, he's the chairman. Why, I mean, you know, something as simple as putting, these things are cheap, pretty cheap, you know. the cat's eyes, as we call them, these little things that light up that they put on the highways. Why they can't put them on the roads around Jamaica?
You're asking the wrong person. I don't control the budget and how the budget is used by the NWA. The most we can do is make requests and advocate for change. And yes, they are part of the council. And yes, they come to the meetings at the Prime Minister. And yes, the ministers are there. And no, it doesn't happen. So that's part of my job to speak about it publicly until it happens. I don't have any control over the Ministry of Finance and how they allocate resources in this country. The most we can do as a council is to advocate for change, to highlight change, to speak about it. And thank God for the media, because we have no money for public education right now. They have allowed me to be speaking consistently about this matter on primetime TV, both TBG and CVM, and RGR, and IRI, nationwide. I've been talking about this consistently every day, almost.
Dr. Jones, about on the question of the motorcyclists. Is it a fact that most of the motorcyclists killed so far are from the parish of Westmoreland? Am I right?
Yeah, man. So the motorcycle thing is a complex thing, Desmond. It's a complex thing. Let me tell you why. There are a lot of motorcyclists being imported into the island because it's a relatively cheap mode of transportation. We're getting a lot of motorcyclists from China. The problems are multiple and complex. When the police seize a motorcycle because it's not licensed, it's not insured, and the driver has no license, and if you go to Westmoreland, you see a whole pile of motorcycles there. They buy another one the very next day. They have money to burn. A lot of them who ride motorcycles. Many of them belong to gangs, not all of them, many of them. And in order to be initiated into a gang, there's a gang called the No Headlight Crew. They are required to ride at night.
Sorry, what's that?
No Headlight Crew.
Okay.
They are required to ride at night as a form of initiation without turning on their headlights, which is madness. And they do all kind of things in order to remain in the gang. But that's only one side of the story in terms of the cultural challenges. They will not wear their helmets. They drive too fast. And we have had at least 3 or 4 in the last year or two, where 2 motorcycles have met in a head-on collision. I don't know how you do that.
Yes.
That one baffles me every time I hear it. So it's an entire culture. It's an entire thing of disobedience and indiscipline. And
also, Dr. Jones, motorcycles are used in Westmoreland. I don't know how frequent it is now, as one of the passenger carrying units.
Exactly. But the funny thing, Desmond, the data is showing, is not the ones who are involved in carrying passengers who are dying on the roads. It's the others. The ones who have the bad taxi are usually much more careful. And the data is showing up that they are not the ones who are involved in the crashes. It's the renegades. The ones who behave, who don't stay in the lane. The ones who overtake 3, 4, 5 cars and run into a truck. Those are the ones who are dying on our roads.
But Dr. Jones, that takes us to the policing. And you know, I really want to have ACP Mackenzie at some point. That takes us to the policing. The policing is almost non-existent in many parts. I know they have large numbers. In Kingston, you hear about the regular spots where this thing, people use right-hand turning lanes as straight lanes, undertake, on South Shoulders, all over the place. St. Catherine, the spots are known all over the country. Are you, again, these are your partners, are you satisfied with the levels, the numbers and the levels of policing that takes place with regard to road safety?
Well, let me answer it this way. police under several heads of peace, including the present commissioner, Kevin Blake, have been consistently a valued partner in the efforts to reduce fatalities and injuries in the country. There can be no doubt about that. Can they do better? Of course. One of the challenges they face is that they are not allowed to chase down motorcyclists, because if they chase them down and the motorcycle crashes and dies, then they're in trouble. So they tend to find other ways. And once you chase down those who are not wearing helmets, because you know that motorcycles go at warp speed. These motorcyclists travel in excess of 150 kilometers, 160, 200. So it's very difficult to catch them chasing them down. So they have employed different strategies to find them at their homes, where they congregate, to find them. Increasingly, they are finding them, not as quickly as we would like, but it is a reality that to the public and to the naked eye, it would appear as if they're not enforcing the helmet wearing law as much as they should, not enforcing the speeding on the roads as much as they could. But policing motorcyclists is a difficult job, and therefore we need to find all manner of ways, including putting up cameras, which is what we are presently discussing with the Minister of National Security, because you can't have a policeman on every corner. We need to use cameras.
Dr. Jones, I wasn't even just talking about the motorcyclists, man. I'm talking about almost any stretch of road out there. There are violations which are repeated. I mean, here in Centre, there are some road sections where, constantly. I mean, I know where in St. Mary, constantly.
I agree with you. And there's clearly some deficiencies. But if a nation decides that it wants to behave like shutters all over the place like the taxis, it's not easy to control them, Franklin. We are a nation of indisciplined people. One of the things I learned recently, and I want you to listen to this very carefully, there was a discussion on odd angles, and I wrote in a blog about it recently, about the 5 who were killed in Waltham. And one of the interviewees, an anthropologist.
Sorry, can we just have Winnie just take some of the comments, and we're going to come back to you on that. Winnie, just please, because we have
before you go any further, let's welcome all our viewers. And we have Jeffrey, Rubian, we have Keith, and we have Owen. Jeffrey is greeting us. Jeffrey says greetings. Rubian says good afternoon, everyone. Greetings again. Good afternoon. But there are some other comments. Even though it is less than this time last year, it is still too high. That's the number of persons killed on our roads. And Rubian Forbes again says, this is crazy. There's some other comments that we really need to get. Keith Palmer says, bikers ride as if they're Iron Man. They have no respect for the trucks and cars on the road. One more, yes. Owen Richard says, it's evident that a number of drivers on the roads did not get a license legally. And I would love to comment, but continue. Carleen Clark says, the cat's eyes is a good idea for a start. Some places dark bad at night. True. Thank you all, and keep the comments coming.
Okay, yes, Doc. Please go ahead.
Dr. Jones, and if you're
just joining us, we speak
what the
Lucien
anthropologist was saying in respect of policing multiple killers and multiple killing. That you can't police a storm, you have to prevent the storm. The challenge we face is that there's a storm on our roads. There are people who are indisciplined and who are vested in behaving like this because they're hustling. You can't police a storm when people are determined to behave like this on our roads. You have to deal with the storm. And to deal with the storm, it requires public education. It requires, yes, increased policing, but it requires mobilizing the entire country to make sure that people behave differently. It's not a National Road Safety Council situation or police alone. The entire country needs to be mobilized, just like we're mobilizing to deal with crime. we need to mobilize the entire country to deal with road fatalities and behavior on our roads, because it is out of control. And it requires every single one of us to make sure that we can intervene. And this road fatalities constitute the second leading cause
But
of
Dr.
death.
Jones, I don't buy that, Dr. Jones, I don't
But you don't buy
buy that.
Franklin. But you don't buy.
And it's not out of lack of respect for you and your work and the exhortations.
Come on, I understand what you're saying.
The exhortations of people say we need to call on more, we need to. Yes, of course we need, but we have not been getting this discipline that you have been speaking about. You have been speaking about it for a long time. I am saying to you, Dr. Jones, that the authorities, including the police, must find a way to make it clear to people that if you drive down the road with flashing lights on your car, it's not going to be allowed, it's not going to be tolerated, you're going to be punished. If you drive on the inside lane and undertake people, you're going to get caught. We can't appeal to those people because they don't care and they're not listening.
No, man, I agree with you. But you have to do the two things at the same time. You have to put in place a system about which I spoke, and you have to exhort and you have to appeal. So we're not appealing in a vacuum, but I'm saying as a country, we need to mobilize the entire country to deal with a behavior pattern which is insidious and is complex and is difficult to manage. There is no silver bullet to manage taxi men who are behaving like shutters. It's not an easy problem.
I want to make a comment. I want to say this. Undisciplined people anywhere are undisciplined everywhere, including on the roads. So it's a problem of discipline in this country. And when it comes to punishment, people don't believe in punishing those who do wrong. They pat them and others see it and they continue with this kind of behavior. It's not just the roads, it's one thing.
As Dr. was saying, managing this storm, part of what we are reaping on the road now is from corruption. That is too many licenses over the years have been sold. So you have many drivers on the road with licenses who did not go through the process, and therefore they are unaware of the rules of the road. And so I'm saying that the selling license over the years is part of what we are reaping today.
Yeah. And the authorities have never dealt with that reality. We have never had a public statement from a public official. The nearest person who went to it is as I remember, is Delano Franklin, saying that the selling of licenses must stop. It will stop because of these particular measures. And we have never had that clear and unmitigated statement of action.
Well, at a lower level, not at a very high level, the former director for the Island Traffic Authority, Mr. Kenwood here, used to speak out regularly and consistently about corruption in the system and that he planned to deal with it. Has a minister in recent times spoken about the corruption in the ITA? I can't recall, but I know it's the subject of discussion. And there are three issues. It's not just a license for Desmond. It's also the passing of motor vehicles. There are some motor vehicles which are passed and never see the light of day at the traffic authority. Plus, there's also the corruption, including involving the police, who accept bribes and who demand bribes in order to give people a blind. So there are corruption at different levels. And I know that some of them have been addressed actively. Of course, you're not going to hear about all the details of the interventions that have been there. But certainly in terms of police corruption and bribes, I know that is a hot topic. The question of issuing of licenses and the question of passing motor vehicles unlawfully, that's also a subject which I know is receiving attention at a fairly high level. Yes, I would like to have and to hear others in high office speak more about this. But to the extent that we can speak about it and try and do something about it and highlight it, then we need to.
Dr. Jones, I don't know if Winnie wanted to pick up, but I wanted to come back to you on it. Did you say that you don't have a budget for public education? Because I've been wondering about that. Can you tell me what's the situation in that public education?
Right now we don't. No, we used to get money from the National Health Fund. That has dried up in recent time. We haven't had any money from National Health Fund for the last 5 or 6 years.
So you see, Dr. Jones, why some of us are cynical. Here is a council, and you don't have the budget overall to deal with policing, to deal with those things. But at least we would expect that you would get some funds that you could carry out a program to tell people why they must, behave in all the ways that you personally do, and that we would have a campaign. But may I just suggest to you, Dr. Jones, the JIS, which is a government organization, has shown over the years that it is very capable of carrying out campaigns, very, very capable on its TV programs and its radio programs and so on. And perhaps that's somewhere there the council could approach. And I would also make another suggestion, that since insurance companies would benefit from reduced crashes, I would think that they do, that perhaps a serious campaign ought to be launched in talking to insurance companies, which make a lot of money, by the way, to help fund your campaign, sir. I don't know how you would respond. And Winnie, you want to take the comments? There are some comments that are coming.
There's a comment.
But Winnie, before Dr. Jones, go ahead, Winnie.
Well, Keith Palmer said, I think I read this one. I think they should be ticketed. I think that's a word that should be there if they ride without helmets or the proper gear. And there's another, Nate says, all bikers must have licenses and learner's permits. Any biker that have previous infringement must get police permission. That is what Nate says. Thank you, viewers. Keep the comments coming in. And while I'm on the floor, I'll ask a question that I have to ask, and that is it time to pay attention to jaywalkers? Should jaywalking be something that people pay attention to here in Jamaica?
Let me answer both questions. One is that the matter of public education has been a concern of ours for many years. The Prime Minister himself spoke about this after a meeting early this year, where we had requested funds from the ticketing system to carry out a major public education campaign. That funding has not yet arrived. We have requested also of the private sector, including insurance companies. We have not gotten the kind of response which is consistent with the problem we face as a country, as a most I will say. So we are in a position where neither the government of Jamaica nor the private sector has supplied us with the kind of funding that we think we need in order to carry out one of our major parliamentary mandates. So right now we are in a difficult position. Yes, GIS has been very helpful, and let me say more than that. The media in general, I have a WhatsApp group with about 30 media practitioners, and I send out data on a regular basis. If it were not for the media, mainstream media in this country, you wouldn't hear much about the National Safety Council. So the media in particular have been extremely generous and helpful in helping to advance the cause and the work of the National Safety Council. As far as jaywalking is concerned, that has been a hot discussion for many years. The essence of the rebuttal against that is that until you have the infrastructure to ensure that people can walk safely, you really should not be justified in trying to fine people for walking carelessly across the road. You need to put in the signs, you need to put in the overhead bridges, you need to have all those facilities before you can say, okay, you guys are not using it.
You need to have the sidewalks cleared
Yeah, you
Dr.
need to have a
Jones?
number of things in order to do that. So it's not
You
a
need to have
discussion.
access to the sidewalks.
Yeah, it's not a discussion which is foreign to us. When it's something that has been discussed and very heatedly within the road safety circles. But that's the position for the time being. But I think it's going to happen and happen in not too distant future. We're going to have jaywalk.
Really? You think that we'll have the sidewalks clear, that we'll have all the
Well, that's our hope.
We'll
That's
have
our
those.
hope.
Okay.
That's our hope. So we continue to advocate and we continue to talk and we continue to speak at the highest levels.
Dr. Jones, before we wrap up here with you, let me just ask you to put out your outlook for the rest of the year. You did some of that at the start, and to make your appeal that you would like to appeal at this point. Your outlook for the rest of the year.
In November, 23 people died, which is normally 40 and 35. So we have made a relatively good start to the Christmas season. We need to make sure that during the month of December, the entire nation is vigilant about safety. Once you go on the road, you have to think safety. And everybody needs to be talking about this. Everybody needs to be discussing this. How can we, in the words of one of our reggae artists, Desmond, how can we reach home safe? That's the object, that's the target, that's the goal for all Jamaicans during December, so that we can celebrate Christmas as it ought to be, with joy and hope, rather than with grief and pain and tears. In order to do this, we have to make sure that drivers drive much more carefully, much slower. They don't drink and drive. Make sure you have a partner who is not drinking when you go to the party. Make sure you don't smoke ganja and drive. Make sure you put on a helmet, wear your seatbelt. Don't wear dark colored clothes at night because you can't see if you're a pedestrian. Put on your seatbelt. Do not use your cell phone and drive. It's madness. Don't be watching videos while you're driving. It's craziness. Mm-hmm. So if we do all of that, hopefully all of us will enter into the new year to be a very productive year for our country, alive and well, and contribute to national development and all the good things that we hope for Jamaica.
Thanks, Dr. Jones. When we were introducing Dr. Jones, I mentioned that he's a man of great faith, strong faith. Does a lot of his medical work, even free. I know about some of that. But Desmond Richards was asking him something. We had a real canter here before the program started, and I wanted you to get a taste of what Desmond asked Dr. Jones. Earlier, Desmond, you and your genocidal question, you want to ask Dr. Jones again, let him answer before he leaves us.
I am not going to get an answer from Dr. Jones, because Dr. Jones is a strong,
the same answer I gave it before.
Is a strong Christian. Is that what is God doing to protect the people of the Palestinians and stop the genocide in Gaza? What is God doing to stop that?
Well, Desmond, you're posing the same question that was posed many years ago by philosophers in Portugal when there was a major earthquake and a whole lot of people died. And they asked the same question. His name was Bertrand Russell, sorry. And he gained notoriety because he said there was no God, and that if there was a God, the people in Portugal would have been spared. And in that instance, a lot of people died in churches. So it's a question which has reverberated across the years. The simple answer to that question, Desmond, is that God is known in and through Jesus Christ, and by no other means. So if you believe in Jesus Christ, you understand that we live in a broken world, a world that is full of sin and evil and disaster and trouble. And that the sovereign God, who himself died in the form of Jesus Christ on Calvary, to defeat and gain a victory over sin and death and evil, is the same God who is rescuing people all over the world from sin and death and evil. And when Christ comes again, that's the only time that you're going to have no deaths and no sin and no disease. Until
That
that
is
time, we have to
when
look
Christ is coming
for a
again.
world that needs to be fixed and can be fixed only in Christ Jesus, no other fashion. So your question is not about the people in Palestine. It's about what is happening in Haiti. It's about what is happening in America with these mad people who voted in Trump. It's the same thing which is happening in many African countries that are going through turmoil. It's the same
It's
thing
the
that's
suffering
happening
that some
when
Jamaicans face.
hits Indian Ocean people in 2004, on Christmas, the day after Christmas Day, on Boxing Day, and 230 people perished. We live in a broken world, Franklin and Desmond, a world that can only be fixed when Christ comes again.
That is when.
That's what sinners,
When Christ is coming again.
only God knows. Jesus said, no man knoweth when the Son of Man shall come again. Only God
Desmond, you
knows.
have 10 minutes, 10 seconds to answer that and we'll move on.
So the simple answer, Desmond, is that all the troubles and the wars of the world will only come to an end when people accept Christ. And the problem with the Jews in Palestine is that they have not accepted Christ as a Messiah. And they are being led by Netanyahu, who don't believe in Jesus. And that's why he's causing so much trouble over there.
All right.
Okay.
Dr. Jones, I want to thank you roundly. Desmond, you have a response to Dr. Jones before we let him go?
No, sir.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, sir. You're a good man, and you're not eating into your time. Dr. Jones, thank you very much, and thank you for the continued service you continue to give in the National Council, because you must have saved a lot of lives over the years by advocating and by those people who have.
Well, thank you for this special privilege, Franklin. As I said, I hold both you and Desmond very highly in regard of your journalism and your contribution to national development. And Winnie is my friend and special patient. So I am so glad to be in our company.
Many years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks.
much, Dr. Jones. That's Dr. Lucien Jones. He's the man you hear so often making appeals to people to slow down, to listen, to not drink and drive, not smoke ganja and drive, wear your helmets. That's the man. And he says he doesn't have any budget for public education. Desmond, you had prepared some comments, so let's hear you on. You have 1 minute. You have 1 minute, Desmond, on to tell us about what's happening with hurricane burial victims.
Well, thousands of hurricane victims right across the country right now are suffering, right? And when I talk to people in Alligator Pond, in St. Elizabeth, in Portland, many of them to date have not been assessed, right? And with the rain, as you know, it is pouring in some parishes, and especially those areas that were hit by burial, that these people are having a rough time. Their roofs were blown off. And I have seen reports, I've received reports that persons who receive, some persons who receive minor damage, they receive aid. And those who receive the bigger damage have not received any aid.
Desmond, I'm going to promise our viewers that we're going to try to see whether we can get somebody from the Ministry of Labor, Social Security next week to talk about what's happening to people who suffered loss. I thank you for raising it, Desmond, because I've heard about some cases. I've even heard about some cases of farmers up in St. Anne South and so forth. So it's a worthy topic to take on. Winnie, I'm sorry we couldn't get onto your AI issues that you wanted to take. That's our show for today, episode 147 of the Frankly Speaking Jamaica Podcast. Remember, please subscribe to the Frankly Speaking Jamaica Podcast. Thank you for joining us again and for sharing with your friends. Keep the comments coming. Thanks to our special guest, Dr. Lucien Jones, Vice Chair of the Jamaica Road Safety Council, and so many other things. Thanks to Winnie Anderson Brown, Desmond Richards, and technical producer Joshua Black Media Services. I'm Franklin McKnight. Until then.